You know it's going to be a strange day when your neighbor comes stomping across the cul-de-sac like she's on a mission from the HOA gods, clipboard in hand, lips pursed tight enough to crush coal into diamonds. That was Karen. Pink Crocs, leopard print visor, and a t-shirt that said #blessed in glittery letters that didn't match her attitude. She marched right up to the edge of my lawn like it had personally offended her. "Excuse me," she called out, waving her clipboard like a sword. "Do you have any idea how much of an eyesore your lawn has become?" I paused mid-rake, trying to figure out if she was joking. I looked at my yard. Sure, the grass was a little high, maybe 4 inches over regulation, but nothing dramatic. It had been a hectic week. My wife and I had just gotten back from visiting her parents, and I hadn't had time to mow. Some dandelions had popped up, a few patches of clover here and there, but overall, it still looked better than most yards on the block. Just not, apparently, up to Karen's standards. "I'm submitting a formal complaint to the HOA," she continued, already scribbling something down. "Vegetation violations. This is unacceptable." I blinked. "You're reporting me, for grass." "For weeds," she corrected with a dramatic sniff. "Dandelions are invasive. And the HOA guidelines clearly state that all front yards must be maintained to community standard. Your yard looks like you gave up." I glanced around the neighborhood. 2 doors down, Todd's sprinkler had been broken for months, leaving his lawn looking like a desert. Across the street, old Mr. Henderson hadn't trimmed his hedges since the Bush administration. And yet here was Karen, up in arms over my barely scruffy lawn. It was peak Karen behavior, and I couldn't help the tiny smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. She must have seen it, because she narrowed her eyes and stepped forward. "I will be taking photographic evidence," she said. "You'll be hearing from the board." "Looking forward to it," I replied flatly, leaning back on my rake. She spun on her heel and strutted back to her house like she'd just saved the neighborhood from ruin. Her little white dog, Muffin or Cupcake or whatever its name was, yapped along beside her like backup vocals to her drama. Honestly, I should have expected it. Karen had a reputation. She was the kind of person who reported kids for selling lemonade without a permit. Once, she left a typed, laminated note on someone's car because their tires were too dirty for the community aesthetic. She had single-handedly scared away 3 members of the HOA board with her relentless barrage of suggestions and urgent complaints. And now, it was my turn in her spotlight. I figured that would be the end of it. Maybe I'd get a warning letter, maybe even a light fine, but nothing serious. After all, the lawn was already on my to-do list. But Karen had a different playbook. One that involved immediate escalation. Later that evening, I was sipping a cold drink on the porch, half laughing about the encounter with my wife, when I got the email. Subject line, HOA citation, vegetation violation. I opened it, and there it was, an official notice of fine. Not a warning. Not a gentle nudge. Just a straight-up $150 fine for excessive and unmanaged plant growth visible from the street. Attached were 4 pictures of my lawn, taken from various angles. I zoomed in. There was my front yard, dandelions and all. And then I saw it, clear as day in the reflection of my living room window, Karen's face, holding up a tiny measuring tape and smirking like she'd just caught me committing a felony. I almost choked on my drink. Not because of the fine, though that was irritating, but because of the sheer pettiness of it all. Who carries a measuring tape for grass? Who reports their neighbor over a few stray weeds? I shook my head and laughed, a bitter little chuckle. She really did it, I muttered. My wife peered over my shoulder at the email. "You've got to be kidding." "Oh, she's serious," I said. Karen level serious. We sat there in silence for a moment, listening to the crickets and the faint hum of lawnmowers in the distance. I should have been angry. I should have fired off an email to the HOA or gone over to confront her directly. But something stopped me. Not fear, just amusement. Because the whole thing reeked of hypocrisy, and I had a very strong suspicion that Karen's house wasn't as squeaky clean as she wanted everyone to believe. See, Karen's the kind of person who loves control, but not accountability. She barks orders and quotes rules, but she never applies them to herself. And while she's obsessed with the front yards, the ones visible from the street, I happen to know her backyard told a very different story. Over the years, I'd caught glimpses of it. We live on a cul-de-sac that backs up to a public greenbelt trail, and from certain spots, you can see over into the backyards. Karen's was notoriously chaotic. I remembered once seeing a broken swing set buried in weeds. Another time, a busted kiddie pool sat in the corner for months, collecting rainwater and possibly breeding mosquitoes. I never said anything because, well, I'm not her. But now? Now it was game on. If Karen wanted to play by HOA rules, we were going to play by all the rules. And I was about to remind her that those fences don't block out everything, especially not when karma comes knocking. The morning after I got fined, I brewed my coffee with the same calm, steady hands I always had, but something was different. I sipped from the mug like it was just another Tuesday, but inside, I was already plotting. Karen had made a move, a bold one, and now the game had changed. She didn't just file a complaint, she made it personal. She didn't care about weeds. She cared about control. About being the self-declared sheriff of suburbia. I took my cup and stepped outside. The sun had just started to rise over the neighborhood, casting long golden shadows across the dew-covered lawns. Mine looked fine now. I'd mowed it the night before, right after the email came in. Out of spite. I kept it neat, just to be clear. If the HOA drove by now, they'd think they find a golf course. Karen would be furious. But this wasn't about my yard anymore. This was about hers. I took the long way around. Rather than cutting through my backyard, I grabbed a hoodie, tossed it over my plain t-shirt, and walked along the public trail behind the neighborhood. It was technically a greenbelt, city property that curled between two rows of backyards like a lazy river of shrubs and mulch. Most people barely used it. It was quiet, overgrown in spots, and often forgotten. Perfect for what I needed. As I walked, I counted fences. 1, 2, 3, then hers. Karen's property line was easy to spot. While most homeowners had modest wooden fences or simple chain links, Karen's fence was a patchwork of mismatched panels, faded privacy screens, and what looked like a pool noodle zip-tied to the top of one post. I'm not joking. A bright green pool noodle. Classy. I slowed my pace and stopped near a break in the brush. From that angle, you could see most of her backyard. I had to blink. Was I looking at someone's yard, or the set of Survivor, HOA edition? Weeds. Everywhere. Waist-high in some spots. No, scratch that, chest high. Grass mixed with tall stalks of something unidentifiable, as if she were cultivating a personal prairie reserve. A trampoline sagged under the weight of time and neglect, half covered in leaves and what may have been a busted tarp. One lawn chair lay flipped over near a pile of empty flower pots. And the piece de resistance? A half-collapsed garden archway leaning against a rusted-out fire pit. It looked like a scene from an apocalypse movie set in suburbia. And then I saw it, a possum, or maybe a raccoon, waddling out from beneath the deck with something in its mouth. A Taco Bell wrapper, possibly, or a torn piece of foil. It looked up, blinked at me, and shuffled back under the deck, uninterested in my presence. That possum had probably lived there longer than some of the HOA board members. I took out my phone. It wasn't spying. This was a public path. And besides, Karen had already made it clear she was fine with photo evidence. I snapped shot after shot, wide angles, close-ups, even a little artsy portrait mode of the trampoline with the weeds curling up through the springs. I considered adding a filter, but decided that raw exposure made it better. The photos told a story. A great one. The woman who fined me for clover patches had a jungle behind her home, complete with rusty furniture, wildlife, and probably a species of grass not yet classified by science. This wasn't a lawn, it was a habitat. As I walked back, I crafted the perfect email in my head. No malice, just concern. I'd mirror Karen's tone, the fake politeness, the weaponized civility. The HOA had to see it. By the time I got home, I had the pictures transferred to my laptop and the email open. Subject: concerned neighbor, potential yard code violations, short. Neutral. Deadly. The body of the email read: Dear HOA Board, I hope this message finds you well. While walking the public trail behind our homes this morning, I noticed that one of our community backyards appears to be significantly out of compliance with HOA landscaping standards. The yard in question features unmanaged growth exceeding several feet, visible rusted equipment, and what may be attracting wild animals. I've attached several photos for reference. I bring this to your attention not to stir conflict, but because I believe consistent enforcement of HOA regulations is important for all of us. Thank you for your time and service. I hit send. Within 2 hours, it began. I was inside, making lunch, when I heard the shouting. Karen. Her voice was unmistakable, sharp, nasal, and always 3 decibels too loud. I peeked out the front window just in time to see her pacing in front of her house, phone to her ear, waving one hand wildly. The words weren't crystal clear, but I caught a few gems. What do you mean there's a violation? That's not unmanaged, it's eco-friendly landscaping. This is harassment. I've been maintaining that yard personally. Sure you have, Karen. Personally maintaining it like you personally called out my front lawn for having dandelions. She stood out there for 20 minutes, gesticulating like she was directing air traffic. Then she stomped around back, disappeared behind her fence, and didn't reappear for the rest of the day. By that evening, I'd heard from 3 different neighbors. Apparently, they all got wind of it. 2 had seen her stomping around with hedge clippers, cursing under her breath. One said he saw her trying to mow a section with a weed whacker and nearly cutting the cord in frustration. I didn't need to ask anyone to spread the story. It spread itself. The next day, an official-looking HOA vehicle cruised slowly through the neighborhood. Not something you see often. It paused near her driveway, then made a loop before heading out. I smiled, sipping my coffee again from the same mug, same porch. It wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness. If Karen wanted to be the sword of justice, she had to live by it too. And right now, the sword had swung right back. The HOA meetings were usually a ghost town. A few folding chairs, bad coffee in a styrofoam cup, and maybe 3 bored residents who showed up just to feel like they were part of something. But not tonight. Oh no, tonight it was standing room only. Word had gotten out. Karen's reign of terror over the neighborhood had gone unchecked for years. She had been the loudest voice, the fastest snitch, and the biggest hypocrite. People had whispered about it behind closed doors, grumbled when her emails arrived, but no one had ever dared challenge her out in the open. That changed the second I hit send on my HOA presentation RSVP with 2 little words: public comments. So there I was, sitting in the second row, calm as could be, with a neatly organized PowerPoint file saved on a flash drive in my pocket and a small printed stack of color handouts just in case the projector failed. I wore a polo shirt and khakis to keep it neutral, didn't want to come off aggressive. But make no mistake, I was locked in. Karen, of course, sat at the front table with the HOA board, clipboard in hand, and that smug smirk like she had just conquered a small country. She didn't know what was coming. Not yet. She glanced over and spotted me. I gave her a small wave. She narrowed her eyes. The meeting began with the usual nonsense. Financials. Budget allocations. Tree trimming schedules. Karen even interrupted the treasurer to complain about the new mulch color for the community flower beds. Typical. But then the HOA chair, Mike, a soft-spoken guy who probably regretted ever volunteering, looked over his glasses and said, "We have a resident who's requested time to speak during public comments." I stood up, casually walked to the front, and plugged in my flash drive. The projector buzzed to life. "Thanks, Mike," I said, turning to face the room. "I won't take long. I just wanted to talk about fairness." Click. Slide 1, a photo of my yard, taken earlier that week. Neatly mowed, edged, and clean. "This is my front lawn," I said. This photo was taken 2 days after I received a fine from the HOA for excessive weed growth. I received no warning, no grace period, just a fine and some photos taken by a fellow resident. Karen visibly shifted in her seat. Click. Slide 2, a zoomed-in version of the photo the HOA had emailed me, complete with her reflection in the window, holding up a measuring tape like she was conducting a forensic investigation. Here's the picture from the email I received. I just want to point out the reflection here, that's the person who took the photo. That's Karen. Not a board member. Not an inspector. Just a concerned neighbor, apparently. A couple of people chuckled. Karen crossed her arms. I didn't contest the fine. I cut my grass. I moved on. But out of curiosity, I took a walk along the public trail behind our houses. And from there, I noticed something. Click. Slide 3, Karen's backyard, in all its overgrown glory. Chest-high weeds, sagging trampoline, vines curling around patio furniture like nature was trying to take it back. The crowd gasped. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Click. Slide 4, a close-up of the weeds. Then the busted archway. Then the possum, or raccoon, still not sure, making off with fast food trash. I just want to know, does this meet community standards? Silence. The kind that settles in when everyone's thinking the same thing but waiting to see who will say it first. I turned back to the board. I'm not here to throw anyone under the bus. I just want consistency. If we're going to fine people for 10-inch dandelions, I think we should be looking at everyone. Or maybe, just maybe, we give people a little grace before we start issuing penalties like parking tickets. Mike cleared his throat. Thank you, very much. Those were illuminating visuals. Karen jumped up. This is harassment. Those photos were taken without my permission. I turned to face her. They were taken from a public trail, Karen. Just like yours were. From the sidewalk. She stammered, looking around for support. But nobody came to her defense. Even the treasurer was staring at the photos with raised eyebrows. Another resident, a quiet guy named Steven who never said much, spoke up. I got fined last year for forgetting to edge my lawn. Never got a warning either. This makes me feel a little less crazy. Someone else nodded. I had no idea Karen's backyard looked like that. Karen's face went red. This is a personal attack. This is slander. Mike sighed and raised a hand. Karen, please. Let's keep things civil. We'll review the policy about warnings and enforcement. And we'll look into your yard as well. Fair is fair. I stepped down and returned to my seat, heart pounding but face calm. I didn't even smile. I didn't need to. The room did it for me. After the meeting, people approached me like I'd just scored the winning touchdown at a high school homecoming game. That was amazing, someone said. You said what we've all wanted to say, another whispered. Even the board members gave me nods of approval. Karen, on the other hand, vanished the moment the meeting ended. She grabbed her clipboard and stormed out so fast, her Crocs nearly flew off. Her little dog yipped behind her, struggling to keep up. That night, I got an email from Mike. Hi, just wanted to let you know the board has decided to revoke your fine. We also agree the current reporting and enforcement process needs review. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. But the best part? The final sentence. We've also asked Karen to step down from her position as Community Standards Liaison, effective immediately. Boom. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and laughed quietly to myself. Not a petty laugh, okay, maybe a little, but mostly a satisfied one. After all these years of watching Karen terrorize the neighborhood with her clipboard and self-righteous crusades, justice had finally done a little landscaping of its own. And it was beautiful. After the meeting, everything started to change. It was subtle at first, like someone had cracked a window in a stuffy room. You couldn't see it right away, but you could feel it. The neighborhood got quieter, more relaxed. You didn't have to check over your shoulder before painting your front door. People started planting flowers without worrying if they were HOA-approved species. I even saw a kid draw chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk, and no one came out screaming about graffiti. Karen had disappeared. Well, not literally. She was still there, holed up in her house on the corner lot, but she was quiet. No more late-night emails to the board. No more mysterious photos appearing in people's inboxes. She wasn't walking Muffin, or Cupcake, or whatever that tiny dog was called, 3 times a day anymore, and when she did appear, it was a flash of pink Crocs and a stiff back turned away from the rest of the street. After the HOA board graciously accepted her resignation from her self-appointed role as Community Standards Liaison, it was like someone unplugged her megaphone. Suddenly, she didn't have the power to scold or enforce. And without that power, she was just Karen. A woman with a clipboard and no audience. I didn't expect the neighborhood to bounce back so fast, but it did. People started talking again, like actual conversations, not just those awkward waves you give while mowing your lawn under pressure. Mike, the HOA president, set up a weekend coffee table in the park with donuts and invited people to swing by for casual feedback. Someone organized a block barbecue. I hadn't seen that much potato salad in one place since my cousin's wedding. And here's the kicker, lawns actually started looking better. Not because people were afraid of getting fined, but because they weren't constantly on edge. When fear leaves, pride takes its place. Folks wanted to take care of their yards again. Not to avoid a ticket, but because it was their yard, and they could actually enjoy it now. It felt like we got something back we didn't even realize we'd lost. Even my own front yard started getting compliments. One guy said my flower beds made the place look like a magazine. Another neighbor dropped off a cutting from her rose bush as a thank you. I hadn't asked for any of it. I just wanted the madness to stop. But there's something about standing up to the bully that makes people remember their own backbone. Then came the real surprise. One afternoon, I was watering the flower beds when I heard footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up, and there she was, Karen, walking slowly, that ridiculous visor back on her head, dog leash in hand. Muffin or Cupcake trotted ahead, sniffing each crack in the pavement like it owed him money. I straightened up and nodded politely. I wasn't going to gloat. I figured she'd just keep walking. But she stopped. Right in front of my lawn. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked around, eyes scanning the neatly trimmed grass, the flowers along the edge, the tiny birdhouse I'd installed near the tree. It looks better, she said finally, her voice low. Flat, but not entirely hostile. Thanks, I said. I like it. She nodded once. Her eyes flicked toward the hose in my hand, like she wanted to say something more but didn't know how to form the words. A stiff silence stretched between us. "Yours is looking better too," I added, glancing down the street toward her house. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but someone had definitely been working on it. The weeds were mostly gone. The broken furniture had disappeared. Even the sagging trampoline had vanished. It was no garden show winner, but at least it no longer looked like a cursed forest. She gave a tiny shrug. "Hired someone." I nodded again. "Probably a good call." She looked like she was chewing rocks for a second, then muttered something that caught me off guard. I didn't think it would matter. I waited. "What wouldn't?" "The backyard," she said, not looking at me. "It's not visible from the street." I figured. "I don't know. No one pays attention to what they can't see." I almost felt sorry for her. "Almost." "Yeah," I said. "But it matters. Especially when you're holding everyone else to a different standard." She didn't argue. Just stared at her dog for a minute, then gave a slight tug on the leash. "Well. That's all I wanted to say." She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Karen." She glanced back. "You ever think about joining the gardening club? They meet every second Saturday. Pretty low-key." Her eyebrows lifted. For a second, I thought she was going to laugh. Or scoff. Or fire off some sarcastic jab. Instead, she nodded once. "I'll think about it." She walked off without another word, her dog trotting beside her, tail wagging like it didn't know its owner had just been dethroned from her self-built empire. I stood there for a while, hose still in hand, watching her disappear down the block. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Maybe it was growth. Maybe it was just damage control. But either way, it was different. And different was good. Weeks passed. Karen kept to herself, but she stopped glaring at people. She even said, "Good morning," once, though it sounded like it physically hurt. People didn't forget what she had done, but they forgave in the way neighborhoods do. Not by speeches or apologies, but by slow inclusion. A wave here, a smile there, a plate of cookies left on a doorstep during the holidays. By summer's end, the neighborhood felt like a real community again. We weren't just people living on the same block, we were people belonging to it. And Karen? Well, she never quite became one of the gang. But she came to the barbecue. She brought deviled eggs and even complimented someone's patio furniture. She didn't bring her clipboard. And nobody mentioned the jungle. Not even once. Which, if you ask me, is the best kind of ending.